so now we'll gather back together, and I'm going to ask you to think now out loudly, or think with yourself for a moment, and then if you can share with us, like, what are the chances that if I allowed you to sit next to that person, you would choose them to sit next to them out from all this group?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. 0? Okay. All right. And because it seemed like everybody had a great conversation. Right.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no, it's like not 0, whatever, it's not, if you know everything, right? But like,
well, that's interesting, yeah.
Right?
Actually, someone new or would actually.
right, would you be magnetized to that person because of their looks or because of whatever, because you think that you might have something in common? Just be mindful of it. You don't even have to, say it out loud if it's embarrassing. But just be mindful, like you had it seemed like everybody had a great conversation. And it was hard to stop everybody. So, right, so just think to yourself, what would be the chances that if they were just in the room, you would come out and reach out and say, I want to get to know you.
Yeah, I like this.
Right? So that's the first thing I want you to notice.
Yeah.
The second thing I want you to notice and ask yourself is, what inspiration or what new knowledge or inspiration you got from your conversation? Anybody wants to share? Okay.
Well, I didn't have the name. Yitzhak. Well, Yitzhak has an incredible history. Where he comes from and how he wound up in Israel and Sephardi and Turkey, and it's just interesting how the interactions within his family and being brought up, and there were commonalities. Even though I grew up in the States, my mother also was kind of like not allowed to do what she was good at. It was my father's responsibility to make a living. It was interesting that we both had the same thing on opposite sides of the world. So that was kind of interesting. So we did have things in common.
Okay. Where are you from? Where are you from?
Well, my parents is from Sonica, which was the Turkish Ottoman Empire. Until the Greeks came, and then they came to England.
Fascinating.
Anybody else?
I don't know your name either. Eva. Okay. What was good with her is that I don't know her. So because I don't know her, it's easier to talk, it's easier to communicate, but then I was doing most of the talking.
Okay.
Because I could find somebody that doesn't know me, but yet is listening to me. And I thank you very much for that.
It was pleasurable.
Yes,
Okay.
It made me feel good.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
I know this lady's name very well, and we are friends outside the community centre, and we have communicated a lot, and I still found out new things about her, and of course I did most of it. She's a very good listener.
So can you learn from that something that I go along with many times, that sometimes you know somebody forever, but you feel like all of a sudden you didn't know anything about them, right?
And she was one of my first friends in Nigeria. She invited me in.
Nice.
Made me welcome.
Right. So we can learn from that, about our best friend or even our spouse sometimes, that sometimes we even live with someone and there's new things, one of the things that in long-term relationship or even short-term relationships, we learn statistically that a relationship wears out within 2 years. A marital or a romantic relationship wears out within 2 years because people tend to think that they know everything about each other already. So it's another good thing to know that I don't know anything about you. I don't know anything about you before, so I can't judge you on anything because I just think that I can assume things about you, right? And so it makes me distant from you because I'm assuming things. But even with people that I might know for a long time, I can find out new things that will intrigue us and new things that will rekindle the light between us and et cetera, whether it's best friends or spouses.
Well, I think this has made a big difference to us. But Matty and Tip have gone out of their way to get something like this set up, which was hard. No, it is amazing, and we then, because of that, we all have made more friends.
Right.
I think.
Hooray to Money thank you so much.
Annie, I don't know so well. It's amazing. Annie, I don't know so well, but I know her.
See, she started calling me Annie now.
And no, Annie, it is Annie.
No, because I told her just now that in my childhood that my family, my cousins used to call me Annie, so I guess you're right. So that's why she's calling me Annie.
Miriam?
Yes.
I had two people to talk to, and I was very happy that I was sitting with them because I know that they're both creative, and although I don't know them very well, I know them, and I knew that we were talking about some things that would, no matter what we talked about, kind of led to creative things. Wherever the question was, we all talked equally, we would ask each other questions, and it always came to something creative. That's nice.
So we're coming closer to the 17th of Tammuz, which brings us to the 3 weeks that we memorize and commemorate the feeling of separation and how we want to get back together and learn to love each other. And life is like a spectrum. On one side is what we call baseless love, and on the other side is what we call baseless hatred, God forbid, you know. And it's like, if you think about it, it's like baseless love. It's like we need to find reasons to love, but we don't need many reasons to hate or dislike. Forget hate. Hate is a big word, but dislike, disconnect, feel that in our hearts. That I'm like, oh, I don't need to do it, you know. But it's like this disconnect, this initial disconnect, this like initial dislike is causing us big separation. We need to be mindful of it, and we want to create not just a not dislike, but we really want to, you know, distance ourselves from that baseless hatred closer and closer to baseless love. So we want to be mindful of that as we walk our streets, as we walk our community, in a gathering when we walk, you know, like it doesn't have to be initiated this kind of a structure that, you know, I walk over to you and I say, hi, what's your name, you know? And all of a sudden I find out that we have much more in common than I would have thought. And if you're gonna try to do it with people who seem more like you, but even more so, try to make it a practice just for yourself to even go to the furthest person you would think that you would initially communicate with. And you will find so many bridges in life that you wouldn't imagine, just like you might have found today in this room. So that's, you know, one thing that I want to leave us with. And another thing I want to leave us with is like, think in this room, or maybe people who are not in this room that you have in your mind, that you might want to call and invite them for Shabbat meal. You know, maybe you're waiting for somebody to invite you for Shabbat meal, but be the first one to call them and invite them for Shabbat meal. And it doesn't matter, you know, if we're single or not single, you know, sometimes there's like this thing that only couples can invite or only families can invite. But it's not true. On the contrary, sometimes, you know, we're in the same age group or in the same situation, whether we're two widows or two divorcees or whatever it is, and we have more in common. And, you know, something that I was discussing the other day with, you know, sometimes we think you're my bestie, you know, or somebody is my bestie, right? So, but my besties can be different people in different moments. And sometimes, you know, we tend to feel like we need to get some energy from somebody who I believe in, that is my best friend. But they're not available right now. Something is going on in their lives. But maybe what's going on in their lives and what's going on in my life are not the same thing. And we're just going to inspire each other in a negative way. And we're going to maybe drain each other out of energy instead of when we both need energy the most. So it's like we can approach it like we were in high school or maybe even in elementary school. Oh, you were my best friend and now you're not available, so you're never going to be my friend again ever again, right? 1 second. Or we can be like, you know what, I don't want to approach life in this, attitude that I was kind of instinctively brought up with. I want to change that attitude. I want to be like, you're my friend, but you have your times and boundaries and, issues and whatever. And when we have time to communicate, when we have good, whatever, it is that put us together, whether it is putting us together or isn't putting us together, whatever it is, we want to be mindful of that. So that way we don't get hurt and we don't hurt the other. And we can still keep our connections of yesterday into tomorrow, even if today it's not relevant. Not everything of yesterday is relevant for today, and it's not necessary that it's not relevant for tomorrow if it's not relevant for today. And then we just, walk around. It's like we can walk on the street and we're like so upset that this friend is not giving me my attention, whatever, right? And then we bump into someone and we find out that they actually went through something similar that I did at this moment, right? And they can become my best friend at that moment because they actually know what I'm going through at this moment because they've been through something similar. So it's much more appropriate for me to hang out with them at that moment. So we just really want to be mindful of that. And I see it a lot in my clinic how, those, connections, good connections, not only between spouses, but also between friends, are being broken because of not respecting not where I am, not where they are, and where we both need them, where we're at. And how to create it in a way that it will be everlasting and it won't jump from 0 to 100 or from the 100 to 0. And we'll all be upset because of it and lose friends, and our social anxiety might grow from it, and we might think that we're a loser because of that, and nobody ever loves me, nobody ever wants to be with me. It's not that they don't want to be with you now, it's just that they have something going on too. So if you want to share or say something on that, and not to want to say something.
Just that Pam isn't here because she wasn't feeling so hot, but she's one of the reasons this advanced. It truly advanced because she, as a teacher, realized that there were students in her group or just friends and partners in her group that had needs, had support needs, had issues or concerns. And it prompted us to look at this concept of you all are mentors. You're a teacher, you're a teacher, you're a teacher, she's a teacher here. And people come to you with all kinds of life situations, but it may not reveal itself only in the classroom. And here's an opportunity here and there in the school. Max also has that opportunity. We have it at Bordeaux, where we can tune into people and see where they're needing something, whether it be Shabbat, whether it just be a cup of coffee or just be a friendship. So we have that great chance from now on because we are more aware. I mean, isn't that what we learned? To be more aware, right? So.
And sometimes we also have a tendency to treat our teachers as if they're sort of like above need. So like, like I see it a lot with, whatever, rabbis, teachers, rabbis, it doesn't matter, that, and, I can assume it could happen here too, that sometimes you think, and it doesn't even have to be with teachers and whatever, it could be with also just friends, that you seem like the strong one, so you don't need me to approach and say, hey, what do you need? Because you're the strong one, right? But sometimes the strong one also needs a hand. And sometimes the ones who pretend that they're so strong are the loneliest. So be mindful of that too. If anybody wants to say anything else.
I want to thank you so much. It's really interesting and making us aware of something that we hadn't really thought about. And that's so much of what the support thing is about, is being aware of new things. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
So you want the card for the